You are listening to the Warrior Project podcast, where mindset, tribe, and violence meet.
My name is Justin Garcia, also known as Master Chim, and welcome to the Warrior Project podcast. Today's query: what is a warrior? Before we get into today's topic, I just wanted to remind you guys, we are on iTunes, we are on other databases for podcasts. If, put it this way, at the time of this recording, we are about to be approved for iTunes, so hopefully that'll be resolved by the time you're hearing this. But moving forward, I just wanted to remind everybody to leave us a review, a rating. If you have a moment to jot something positive down, please do so. Obviously, only if you enjoyed the content. But with a new podcast, the game is on, so to speak. And the more support I get from you guys, the stronger the podcast will be. Okay, so let's talk about what a warrior is. Now, those of you that have been following my content, you understand that I look at tribes very formulaically, and the warrior is one of the most important roles that a tribe could have. So, if we talk about an identity or a tribe is based on my RPS formula, which is ritual, procreation, and survival. Survival, the archetype of survival, is the warrior. So how I define a warrior is that role within an identity or tribe that actively prevents the loss of members. Okay, so if there are individual identities or people, right, let's talk functionally for a second. If there are people in a tribe, it's the warrior's job to make sure that they are safe, to make sure that they are insulated, protected from would-be threats. Okay, now within the identity of a tribe, you have a component of warriors that oftentimes, depending on the size and the level of sophistication of a tribe, there could actually be a warrior class within a tribe. Smaller tribes, or even down to the individual, if you want to look at it through that lens for a moment, smaller identities actually just have a component of who they are in terms of what they're responsible for. That is a warrior-like component, right? If you could think of the man, his wife, and children living in the wilderness where there's nobody else around. If there is a threat, the man goes to meet it. But without the threat being present, maybe he helps create shelter. Maybe he goes and hunts, or he helps facilitate the successful living formula that they are applying in the wilderness. But as soon as that threat shows up, he is the one that runs toward it. The mother, obviously, the one that runs toward the children. Now, when we look at the role of a warrior on that scale, it's just a component of an individual, right? And realistically, let's not get into getting everybody excited too early. As far as controversy is concerned, can a woman be a warrior? Absolutely, she can. But I will say, if we look at the predispositions physically, talking about attributes and just the sort of blueprint that our timeline as a species has already set in front of us to observe, we know that men have evolved to fill that role. Okay? Now, being that the role of the warrior is to prevent losing members in a tribe, the honor of a warrior amongst each other and amongst the tribe is based on that mission. So when we get into the idea of what sacrifice can be, and we look at all different types of individuals that fill this role in our society today, from the military man and woman that is in combat to the law enforcement officer, there are a whole bunch of different identities within our society that have, as a component of who they are, this sort of honor-based dedication to preventing the loss of members. This is their mission. And when it comes to being a warrior, that is what drives the rituals that you should be designing for your life. So what do I mean by that? If you consider yourself to be a warrior, I would ask you, well, what is it that you're doing that warriors do? If you know, as an example, and let's say I'm talking to the dads out there, the husbands and dads, if you know that if somebody were to break into your house, somebody were to confront you and your family in a parking lot, somebody were to instigate some sort of conflict out there in the public, and you know that you are the one who's responsible for answering that threat, for meeting that threat where it is, I would ask, what sort of work are you doing in your life to prepare for that moment? Now, it's not to say, and this is where a lot of people get lost, and this is where a lot of times emotional thinking tends to play a role in how people process their responsibilities. It's not to say that, listen, I want you going out there looking for a fight every day, but to say that you are not going to prepare for that possibility is saying that it is not a possibility. It is saying that the probability even is so remote that it should no longer be a component of what your identity is. And then I would ask, well, when we look at the men in our society today, is that not what we see? Do we not see men who, in the face of a threat, would be much more willing to recruit a proxy, a third party, to come and protect them? Are you not to be harsh for a moment, are you not putting yourself, if you're a man who, in the face of a threat needs to call a third party, are you not putting yourself in the role of what has historically, traditionally been a wife? You have a threat that you can't deal with, and you are recruiting somebody that can. You're recruiting somebody that is capable of doing that. Now, that's not to say that, listen, if you're not in the military, and this is something that, I've debated a great deal over the years, if you're not in the military, you can't be a warrior. That's not it at all. And I have a family, of many people that have served. My grandfather, World War II, my father in Vietnam. But I know that if somebody were to actively threaten my family or my tribe, I know that I would be amongst those individuals that would be going to meet the threat. I myself, just during the normal being raised in the Bronx, I've had plenty of instances where I had to face a threat, and plenty of instances within those instances where I actively thought, whether it was true or not at the time, but I actively thought, if I don't get through this, this might be the end of the road right now. Pretty scary stuff. But my point is, it is really the person who is taking on that role, taking on that identity, sort of making a promise to himself and the tribe that fits the warrior role. Okay? So if you are the warrior, what are you doing to empower that? Now, I would say, don't do it as if it's some sort of laborious, responsibility, this chore. Yeah, I got to learn how to fight. Why? Just because I'm the guy who's supposed to fight if a fight needs to be had. No, that's certainly not what I'm selling here. What I'm trying to explain really is the allure of installing a lot of these warrior type rituals into one's life and the benefits we discover once we begin that pursuit, right? So I'm a lifelong martial artist, and a couple of the things that, pursuing that as far as a ritual is concerned, what it has done for me, ironically, when I started training more diligently or in a more structured, consistent way, I found that the fights I was getting into in the street out there, in reality, tended to decrease significantly. Growing up, I was fighting, a few times a week. And, when I'm talking about a fight, I'm talking about, usually a misunderstanding, a challenge, a conflict, and then a resolution. Maybe that thing takes, 5 seconds. Maybe it takes, 5 minutes, whatever the case was. I actively pursued those conflicts before I started training a hell of a lot more than afterward. What do I attribute that to? Well, I would contend that just training and realizing what people are capable of, starting to sort of look at the perspective of your role compared to your tribe, you start to realize, wait a minute, and I'll use the lens that I have now. I'm 42 years old. I have a wife. I have 4 young children from 2 to 10 years old. I cannot get into a fight over road rage. I cannot get into a fight at a gas station over who pulled into the pump first, right? I can't get into a fight arguing about somebody that skipped a line in a store. Why? Because I would have to scale it up to the point where I would potentially either be dying or killing in order to win that conflict. And if I cannot rationalize that conflict being directly related to preventing the loss of my tribe members, right? Protecting my tribe members, then what am I doing if not betraying the oath and the role that I have to my tribe? And it was a lesson that took me a long time to learn, but one that I readily embrace nowadays, and I certainly implore others to do as well. So when we're looking at what a warrior is, a warrior, okay, so what's my take on what is a warrior? A warrior is somebody who has made the pledge. He has made the pledge to his tribe, whatever that represents to the individual, that when a threat appears, it is on them. It is their responsibility. It is part of who they are to go and meet that threat. Okay? Now, are there good warriors and bad warriors? Sure. What are some of the things that make somebody a good warrior? Well, number one, making the oath in the first place. Actually understanding and have it be said out loud, having it be a component of the identity they're recognized as having, as being the person who's going to meet that threat, right? Going and training and installing these rituals that empower your ability to protect your tribe into your life, whether it's training martial arts, whether it's, getting in shape or making alliances. There are a lot of different ways that we could empower, that role that we have. Are there bad warriors? Sure, there are bad warriors. Who are the bad warriors? The ones that everybody thinks is going to meet the threat and doesn't even realize himself that is what his responsibility is, right? The mother or the wife who is being assaulted as the husband runs to go and get the police. These are things that, that we see more and more these days in society. And I would argue, it's because people don't take what the warrior role is seriously anymore. Okay, so what is a warrior? I hope I answered that sufficiently. I will say, those of you that want to get more information about the content that I'm putting out, go to masterchim.com to join the Master Chim letter. What it is a daily email I send out to that list, right? So you put your email on the form on that page at masterchim.com, and every morning I send you an email. And I give you updates, I give you announcements. A lot of times I just want to share with you my perspective, my take on something. It's very, very positively received. I've gotten so many, positive messages as a result of them. It's something that I think you'd enjoy if you enjoy this podcast, for one. Aside from that, you can go to thewarriorproject.com and join us behind the wall of the Warrior Project tribe. Thewarriorproject.com is my website, and you'll obviously find the episodes of this podcast there, but you'll also find the ability to join my membership group. And the Warrior Project tribe, aside from having a vast archive of materials I've been putting out, for over 3 years now, you'll also have access to different events that I host in person, and you'll be able to participate on the private Facebook group that has a few hundred members right now. We talk about some pretty warrior-like stuff there on a regular basis. So check that out. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I certainly enjoyed recording it. And remember, warriors, someone believes in you. Prove them right.